I didn't just show up one day as this really confident woman going, I'm going to start this page and I'm going to build this community and it's going to all be great. It wasn't like that. And I think the reason I have to share this is you have to understand you've got to sometimes go through the toughest times of your life to come out the other side to something that is so unexpected. So that brings us to now the very first episode of 50 and Fearless, the podcast. Welcome to 50 and Fearless, the podcast where bold women gather, grow, and go after more. I'm your host, Kylie Jones, and this is your time. We are finally here after so much talk, so much amazing thinking behind this, and probably me getting way too far into my head because I wanted to make this perfect. And we have been in studios, oh my goodness, it's been a journey. And where we've ended up is welcome to my couch, welcome to my home, because this is where I feel comfortable. This is where I want to share everything with you. And I want this podcast to be so relatable, authentic, and I want the stories that we share here to feel exactly the same. So you're probably wondering, what is this podcast going to be about? This podcast is going to be stories that you can relate to, stories that inspire you, stories that give you confidence, women that have stories to share with you on how they've rebuilt themselves, how they've found their confidence, how they're now following their dreams, how they found their dream job. Anything in this space that helps build women up, that's what we're going to talk about. Because I am such a believer that when you hit 50, you seriously step into your no fucks era and you find this confidence and this passion and this power that you've probably never felt before. And if you haven't felt that yet, trust me, it will come. And I think that's a really good thing to touch on as well. What this podcast isn't going to be about is I'm not going to be in that space of menopause and the medical side of things and the negatives and the night sweats and all that, because there's a lot of people out there talking about that. And I think that's awesome. And I love that there's now that voice and women are talking about it and women are getting the help that they need. That is brilliant. But that's not what this podcast is about. This podcast is about when you step through all of those hormonal changes, you actually shift into this, well, what about me? What about me? What am I doing? Where am I going now? I've probably, a lot of us have raised children, they've been in marriages, we've had all these other labels and responsibilities for many, many, many years. What I want to tap into now is you. And what do you want? What lights you up? What do you want to do now for this next era? And that is what I want this podcast to be about. I want it to be about you, where you want to go, what tools you need to take you there. And those are the tools that I want to talk about on this podcast. It's going to be honest. It's going to be raw. It's going to be probably a little bit controversial at times because I can be very controversial, but I want it to be authentic. And that is why I want to be on my couch. I want to have conversations with people. And those conversations as well, they're going to be people from our community, from the 50 and Fearless community. They may be friends of mine that I know have gone through a lot and are happy to share their journey and their story. I am going to make you laugh. I'm going to make you cry. I'm going to make you probably question a few things. And most importantly, I really want to inspire you because I truly believe that when we step into this era, we can do whatever we want. And we are not too old. We are not too old. That is one thing I will never say on this podcast. I actually believe we are stepping into our best era. And we're stepping into our best era because we know who we are. We know what we don't like. We know what we like. And maybe some of us are still working that out, but we will work through that as well as we go through this podcast. But most importantly, we are now going to take away a lot of the labels that we've carried for so long. And in that process, look inwardly a bit or a lot and look at what makes us light up. And look, there may be many different circumstances that have brought you to a space where you do have to look inwardly, and that's okay. And I will share more about that in a minute. But the most important thing that I want for women of this age to know they can do anything they want. They have the tools, the power, the confidence, all of those things that we can step into our best era ever. So that's what I want this podcast to be about. And I know I'm going to deliver that. I know I am, because I'm so passionate about this space. And if you are just hearing this podcast for the first time and haven't heard of 50 and Fearless before, it is a community that I started on Instagram a year ago. So a year ago this week, I started that community. That community, as we go to air, now has 665,000 followers. An incredible bunch of women, and there are some men in there as well, who show up pretty much every day to be inspired, to laugh, to find their confidence, to share stories. It is an incredible community. But I knew I wanted to say more. I knew there was so many other stories that I wanted to share, and I knew I wanted to give you all so many more tools to help you even further, not just entertain you. I love that I do that. I love that. But I know within me, I know there's a lot more I can do for the incredible community that I have. So that brings us to now the very first episode of 50 and Fearless, the podcast. But I'm going to take you back, because I can sit here and tell you that I'm confident, that I know my direction now, that I've found what lights me up. I can tell you all of those things. But I think I need to first of all share the journey that I've been on to get to this place, because it hasn't been an easy journey. I want you to understand I didn't just show up one day as this really confident woman going, I'm going to start this page and I'm going to build this community and it's going to all be great. It wasn't like that. And I think the reason I have to share this is you have to understand you've got to sometimes go through the toughest times of your life to come out the other side to something that is so unexpected. So I'll take you back just a few years to give you a little bit of context. I live in Sydney, Australia, but my family were all in Queensland, where I grew up, which is another state in Australia. And I had lived in Sydney since I was 18. At 18 years of age, I packed up, moved to Sydney, absolute stars in my eyes. I wanted to work in advertising and marketing and creative and all these incredible things. And I was very blessed with an incredible career, and I loved it. I loved every single piece of it. I was very lucky to create some incredible ads. I've done some incredible work that I've put out there that I'm so proud of. My work was very much my badge of honor, very much so. And then throughout this journey of my career, I was incredibly blessed with a beautiful son who is now 16. And I have pretty much been on my own with him most of his life, which I'm so blessed to have him, but a single mum. So my big thing, single mum and advertising world, they were my two biggest prides. And I put everything I had into both of those things. So I, at the time, was head of marketing of a very big Australian company, and I loved it. I put everything into this job. I traveled a lot with it. My son traveled wherever I went. My company was amazing with all of that. It lit me up and I loved it. And we all know COVID was a really, really tough time for a lot of people. And during that time, within Australia, our states were locked down. So I didn't see my parents and my family for a very long period of time, which I did struggle with. as a lot of you would have experienced the same thing. When that all kind of, all that craziness stopped a little bit, I made the decision that I wanted to move back and be closer to my family, back to Queensland. My company were incredibly supportive of that. I think the great thing with COVID is companies realised that they could work from home. We could have flexibility. I could commute back and forth, Brisbane to Sydney. Anyway, I moved back to Queensland. I'm back with my mum and dad, and a time that I realised I'd missed out on so much. And it was beautiful to be back near them and spending time with them. And my son was settling in new school. It was all fantastic. A few months after getting back there, I remember this moment because this is the moment where your world just stops. I was on a call. I was about to fly to Sydney to a really big event that I was doing down here. I was on a Zoom call with my team, double checking everything, making sure everything was fine. And my brother kept calling me. And I kept ignoring it because I was working and it was really important. And I sent him a text going, I'm in the middle of a meeting. I'll call you later. And his response was, no now. Even in that moment, nothing clicked to me. And it was kind of one of those things, isn't it? That you're like, oh, God, fine. Isn't that important? I'll call you back. So I said to my team, hang 5, I'll be back. And I called my brother, and I'll never forget it. I was still in this mad rush. I had a flight to get to. All these things were going on. And he literally just said, Dad's dead. And in that moment, my world crumbled. Because it was such a shock. It was so sudden. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening to this who've experienced that same grief that you can't comprehend it. You can't get your head around it. And I remember dropping to the floor and very hysterical. But then I picked myself up and went into event mode. Let's just put it that way. Event mode. What needs to be done? I'll organise a funeral. I'll get everything done. And I kicked into the event. I organised the event and farewelled Dad. And it was weird because my house was filled with flowers, a lot from companies that I'd worked for over the years, people that I knew through work. And then I went, it was such a weird moment, and anyone that's listening to this that's been there, you then just go back to work and you go back into this space of, okay, so we just get back on with it. And I don't think I probably really grieved that loss properly because I just threw myself back into work and I got on with it. Now, 6 weeks after that, I had gone back and forth to work into Sydney. Everything was back to normal, if you can say it that way. Anyway, I was in Brisbane and I got a call from my boss to say, hey, I'm in Brisbane, would love to catch up for a coffee. Now, there was no alarm bells to me. And probably listening to this now and other people listening, they're like, seriously? No alarm bells? A coffee chat in a cafe? We never did that, by the way. That never happened. He never came to Brisbane. I rocked up to this cafe with a list long, I'd worked through the night. This is the stuff we need to talk about. These are the presentations I want you to look at, blah, blah, blah. Like I went in fully, this is what needs to happen. I need you to look at all this. Anyway, that's what I did. And I sat down in this cafe, very crowded cafe. I mean, so damn cliche, isn't it? I sat down in this cafe and he did the niceties of how are you coping? How are you dealing with the loss of your dad? And of course you just go, yeah, great. Like, what are you going to say? And then within 2 minutes after saying, how's your dad? And the nice moments, he pushes this envelope across the table and says, we've re-looked at the business. We've re-looked at the structure. He actually said, you've taken us too far down the track right now with your work. It's so incredible. We've got a long way to catch up. So we're going to make your role redundant. And I remember this, what? It was one of those moments where all the noise goes from around you And I have to say, I'd never been made redundant before. So there's a few friends of mine that go, yeah, that's normal. I'm like, I've never gone through this before. And all of a sudden, I just remember this anger, then emotion of like all these emotions just running through my head. And I just didn't know what to do. Like, I was in complete shock. It's like, how can you sit here and say, after all the years I've worked for this company, how are you coping since your dad died? And by the way, boom, here's another little whammy for you. Because you've got to remember, this was my identity. This was me. My work was everything to me. And my son, obviously my family, but my work was my passion. I'd spent 30 years doing it and I was damn good at it. And in that moment, I just remember going, this isn't happening. And I will say, it's not a moment I'm proud of at all, but I was just so many emotions going through me. And I just stood up and I grabbed the envelope and I said, you. And that's it. And then I walked off and he just looked at me in shock. And I walked around the corner and rang my girlfriend hysterical. And it was just that moment in time where you're like, seriously, is this happening? And I actually had to work for another month because I had to hand over the work I'd done. They wanted to make sure the business was in a really good place before I left. And I showed up every day and I did that. And I made sure it was in a really good place. I remember negotiating this really big deal on my very, very last day up until the very last minute because I was so determined that I was leaving there in the best possible way. Anyway, so that happened. I then took off overseas for 3 weeks because I got my son, took him out of school, and it's like, I need to work out what's next for me and where my head's at. And I probably needed to grieve as well. And I hadn't done that. And I went overseas. I spent time with my son. We had an amazing 3 weeks away and I came back and it's like, great, another job. I'm going to come back. I'm going to get another job and I'm going to get going with this. And I couldn't believe the knockback after knockback after knockback after knockback. And I remember meeting up with a friend just going, this doesn't make sense to me. I've never had to find a job in my life. I'd always been poached and moved around. And I said to him, this doesn't make sense. And he said to me, as a nearly 50-year-old woman, you are not a good asset to any company. Excuse me? I was like, excuse me? I have 30 years of experience. I know how to create a powerful brand, a marketing. I was like, what? Then he said, yeah, I know all that. Yes, you have all that. So go out and consult and contract because you've got all those skills, but no one wants to bring you in as a full-time employee as a 50-year-old. I was just gobsmacked. So it was kind of like, hang on. So as a woman at 50, I'm no longer any use because I'm 50. I wasn't a great asset to a company, and especially in marketing and advertising. You've got to remember this is a very young, known or seen as a very young career. So in my space, I was seen as old. And I was trying to grasp the fact that as a 50-year-old, what is that it? I'm out to pasture. And I remember my 50th. I had an amazing 50th lunch with my closest girlfriends and it was great and I loved it. But I still remember that day very clearly because I did feel lost. I felt lost. I was in a city that I hadn't been in for 30 years. I was grieving my father. I was really grieving my job because I was so broken by how it happened. I felt incredibly let down by a company that I'd been so loyal to. And I know it's nothing personal and everyone has told me that, but I struggled. I really struggled with it because I always had the attitude that if you did a really good job, then they'd appreciate that and they wouldn't want you to go. I never thought in a million years if you did too good a job and you got them too advanced, then you'd go. So there was so many things that I was struggling with and I felt really, really lost. If it couldn't have got any tougher for me, this is my journey. I lost my mum. And that is something that I will never got over, and I will always have a piece of my heart missing for mum and dad. But it was just, mum was my world, and she was the most ladylike, kind, beautiful. She just had this beautiful energy. Everyone loved her. You know, my girlfriends from school used to call her Mummy Jones, and she just had this warmth about her. So here I was, within a 16-month period, I had lost my mum and dad. I'd lost my job. And at this point, I had to move out of the apartment we were living in Brisbane. And it was like, I remember saying to a girlfriend of mine, I remember she said to me, "How are you coping?" And I'm like, "I'm an orphan. I have no job and I have no house." And you got to remember, I always had everything that I wanted. I worked really hard for it. I went on holidays. I lived a great life, and I was very, very, very blessed. What I did have was an amazing group of friends, an incredible extended family, and my brother and my amazing son. And with that came a lot of noise. There was a lot of noise. There was a lot of opinions in such a positive way, because I know everyone was putting my best interests, so they thought, first. And they wanted to look after me, and they wanted to give me advice, because they knew I was crumbling, majorly crumbling. And I didn't know what to do. But what I suddenly decided, the number one thing I needed to do was to block out the noise, to block out all the advice, to block out what everyone was telling me to do, and go inwards to what did I want. I was 50 years of age, and I had never felt more lost in my life. I had no direction. I didn't even have a house to live in. And I made the decision, much to the shock, horror of a lot of people, that I was going back to Sydney. And I made that decision on my own. And I remember telling family, and they were like, "What? Why would you do that? You need our support. You need us here." What I knew was I needed to be back where I felt at home. And I had lived in Sydney for 30 years. So this felt like home to me. The other thing is, I know I needed ocean. That's for me. I needed the ocean. It relaxes me. It's like therapy. And anyone that doesn't know Sydney sits on this incredible ocean. It's an incredibly vibrant city, and you've got the beach. So it is a win-win city for me. It ticks every box for me. So I said to my son, we're going back. We're going back to Sydney. Now, he was really happy about that, because he loves Sydney. All of his friends are here, and he was an absolute trooper moving to Brisbane. We came back, and again, nowhere to live, no job, no direction, no parents. Like, it was just all of this stuff happening. But what I discovered was the incredible friends that I had here, the incredible friends that are like, "Come and live with us. You can find something." And piece by piece by piece, things started to slot in a little bit. And I found a place to live. I got my son back into school. I started going in the ocean every day. But I still was really lost. My creativity had gone, and I also felt, as a 50-year-old, this can't be it. I can't just go and get another job. I want to be passionate about what I'm doing. And one morning I got out of bed going, I have to find something to give me purpose. I have to find something that I'm passionate about. I have to find something that lights me up. And that was 50 and Fearless. And that was a year ago. A year ago, I started every day, and actually I went through a period of twice a day, posting on 50 and Fearless. Posting to make me feel better, posting to inspire myself, posting to give myself confidence, posting to let my creative thinking fly. All of it was for me. And I just needed that outlet to go, I'm going to get up each day and I've got something, a role that I have to play. And all of a sudden it started growing. And it was like, it was so quick. What I realized is I had tapped into a community that felt the same way, that wanted to be heard, that wanted to be seen, they wanted to be entertained, they wanted to be motivated, and they wanted to feel damn good about themselves. Now, the funny thing is, for 8 months, I never said who I was. And I could see my friends following me. I could see people I'd worked with following me. And it was like, this is actually hilarious. And I was going to keep it faceless because I was loving it so much. I was loving the creative outlet that I had. I wanted to keep it faceless. And then it occurred to me, I can keep doing this and I can keep entertaining everyone, but that's not the impact that I want. I want more than that. Because what I showed myself was, if you go through the darkest times and times that you go, how am I going to get through this moment? You come out the other side, and sometimes, like I did, you come out in a place that you never, ever imagined you'd come to. And that is why I thought I need to come out and I need to share my story and I need to help as many women as I can on their journey. So that is my story, and that is what brings me here today. That is now why I am so passionate about starting this podcast, because the more people that I can share their stories with other people, the more people we can inspire, the more people we can start having those really positive conversations, the more people that I can help gain their confidence and know that it does get better, that this is an incredible age, that you do step into your power and your no fucks era, then all of that was worth it. I want the 50 and Fearless community to be exactly that, an incredible community of women that help, that support, that give each other the confidence and guidance that they're looking for. And I want to bring those women onto this podcast. I want women to share their stories, and I want this age group to be seen, to be heard, to be listened to not just talk about the negatives of getting older, because I have to say there are so many positives. So thank you. If you have just heard about 50 and Fearless, welcome. To the women that have been here with me from the start, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, because you have no idea how you got me through what you got me through. And I am so grateful for that. And if I, through my page and my podcast now, if I can help more women get through what I got through and know that there's a really big, damn bright light at the end of it, then I am so incredibly grateful. So that is the first episode of 50 and Fearless, the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for letting me share my story with you. I think it's so important that you understand what I went through, how I started the Instagram page that I have, and now where I want to take this. I really want to build this platform so women over 50, 60, 70, whatever age actually, you have a really strong voice, and we get to share those stories and we get to tell the world that we are just getting started. Thanks for listening to 50 and Fearless. If this episode spoke to you, hit subscribe and share it with a girlfriend. And if you're ready for more clarity, more confidence, more you, explore our courses and join our free community. The next step is waiting for you in the show notes. You're not too late. You are right on time. I'll see you next week.